I'd like to show you how you can build a really basic dynamic PHP site using the page and request objects from Magic PHP. I've got my little project in NetBeans here with a libs folder that holds a copy of Magic PHP and an empty folder called views and an index. Now to begin with, I know I've been using the page and request objects from Magic PHP, so I need to include Magic PHP in my index. Let me begin by creating a page object, or rather a page variable that holds a new page object, and echo the entire page as HTML. Save, take a look in the browser, and I don't see a whole lot. I don't see an error, which is the most important right now. There is no PHP error. And if I look at the HTML source code for the page, you'll notice that the page object has done its thing. It has created an empty but valid HTML5 page. So there's no content inside the body, there's no title inside the title tags here, but it's an empty page ready to be filled up. Let's just ever so slightly begin by adding a title. Let's call it a simple dynamic site. So page title will add a title to the HTML page created. Save, take a look in browser. Notice the title tags. They now have a value. There is simple dynamic site written inside the title tags. That's what's going on here in PHP. So this line of PHP creates this line of HTML. Alright, I'd like to show a navigation also. And I'd like that to be a global navigation. That is the same navigation I'd like that to be used throughout my entire site, however big my site will be. Inside views, I'm going to create a new file for my navigation. It's a PHP file, and I'd like it to return an HTML string. I'd like it to return a nav element, and inside the nav element I'd like a couple of anchor elements. Index.php page equals, I don't know what yet. So the first anchor will have the node value of home. Now, for this site, I'm just going to make a really basic site with two pages, one home and one about me. If I wanted more pages, I'd add more anchors here. Now the page home. Clicking the home link in the navigation should load index.php and set an HTTP variable page with the value home. And clicking the About Me navigation link should also load the same page, index.php, but the value of the HTTP variable page should be something else, for example, about. These values are quite important in that I'll want PHP to load a home page when home is requested, and I'd like PHP to load an about page when about is requested. To prepare for that, I'm going to create two views, one for home and one for about. So a new PHP file in the views folder, home, and I'd like that to return a simple HTML string welcome to my home page as an h1. This is my home page. So whatever content I want to show on the home page inside the body tags, I want to write that here. However little or however much HTML I want to have displayed inside the body tags of my page when home is requested. That's what I put here. I'll create a similar view for about. Which will, it's the same idea. It's a PHP script that will return a string, and that HTML string will hold the content I want to display inside the body tags when about is requested, when a user has clicked about me in the navigation. This is something about me. I'd like you to notice that the return statement here actually is as if it's one line. So it's a string that's wrapped in single quotes, and it ends with a semicolon. Now, as my content will probably be longer than this, I don't want to see everything in one line, so I simply inside the single quote limited string add some line breaks, not because I need them, but just because it'll make it so much easier for me to read and organize my HTML. So that's why I do it like this. Anyway, I've got about, home, and navigation. In index, I'd like to show that navigation. So the page body, the very first thing to display, should be the inside the views folder, the navigation file. Let me save that and take a look in a browser. Not the source code, but the actual browser view. So what I see is a blank page with a global navigation. And it's blank because I'm not including anything inside the body except the navigation. The body at this point only holds the navigation. And inside the navigation, this is what I've got. An HTML nav element with two anchors, home and about. If I take a look at the HTML source code, you'll see that the body of this page is empty except for a nav element with an anchor with the node value home and another anchor with the node value about me. So what we're looking at here is exactly what is returned from navigation.php, and we see that in the body of the index.php page because I've included views navigation inside the body. Alright, next up is I'd like this one file, I'd like index.php to sometimes show a navigation and the home content. And at other times I'd like it to show the navigation and the about content. And what it should show really depends on what a user clicked. When a user clicks home, well, notice after index.php I get question mark page equals home. And if I click about me, we have index.php question mark page equals about. So page is an HTTP variable, and the value of the HTTP variable page indicates where the user clicked. And it also indicates what the user should have loaded here. In this case it's about.php, and if I click home I'd like to have home.php. loaded. Let's do that dynamically by way of a request object. So variable request equals a new request object. And the view I'd like to have loaded, that corresponds exactly to the page, the value of the HTTP variable page, which I can get. There is one thing though. The first time a user loads my index.php, the user hasn't clicked on either home or about. So I need to set a default page. So if there is no page found, if there's no HTTP variable with the name page found, I'd like the default view to be home. And what I can do next is simply to say, alright, so the content of my page after the navigation is displayed should be, include ones, some file found inside the views folder that has the name view, or rather $view.php. So this is a variable. $view is a variable. And if no page is found as an HTTP variable, view will have a value of home. But if a user has clicked anywhere in my navigation, the page HTTP variable will have a value of either home or about. And if I've clicked about, well, then I'll include one's views about.php. If I've clicked home, I'll be loading views home.php. Let's just try that. Save, back to the browser, and by default the home content will load. There's no HTTP variable set, so the default view equals home will kick in, and the body will load views/home.php, and I get to see the content, the HTML content defined inside home.php. That is an h1, welcome to my home page, and a paragraph, this is my home page. That's what we're looking at. The generated HTML source code. You'll see first we have the navigation, next we have h1, welcome to my home page, and a paragraph, this is my home page. Now the reason the navigation is on display first is because no matter what, my body, my page body, will have the navigation. After the navigation, my body will then have either home.php by default or whatever view the user requested by clicking in my navigation. Now that is the very basics of a dynamic navigation. And the cool thing about the dynamic navigation is that you save time. You get a much cleaner organization of your files. If I had to do this with hard-coded HTML, if I had to have a global navigation across all of my pages, let's imagine I had 10 pages. In HTML, I'd have to write an identical navigation in 10 different files. That is, an identical navigation on all the pages I have. With a tiny bit of PHP, we're talking what? 10 lines of code here. With a tiny bit of PHP, I can now keep my navigation in a separate file and have it reused across my entire site. That's really cool. Let's imagine I had my 10 pages and I wanted to add an 11th page. With my PHP solution, I add a new view for page number 11 and I update my navigation with an extra anchor. So add one file, change one file. If I had done this with hard-coded HTML, I'd be adding one page and changing 11. So I'd be adding one file and changing 11 files, because I'd have to update the navigation structure in every single page if this was hard-coded HTML. So that's what you gain from PHP. Would you like to change 11 files, or would you like to change 2 files to add a new page? Why don't I show you how to add a new page, just to make absolutely sure you know what I'm talking about. Let's make a new page and call it photos. So this is where I'd like to keep some photos of myself, a personal photo album. So I create a new view that I call photos.php, and I have that return whatever HTML I would like to see. My personal photo album. Here I would have my images. Now I haven't prepared any image files for this tutorial here, so I'm not going to show any actual images, just a string of HTML to illustrate the idea. I save my photos.php and I need to update navigation. So I need to add an extra anchor that loads. Now this is important, that sets a page variable to photos. So this word photos must correspond exactly to the name of the file I'd like to load. So photos will have photos.php loaded. The node value can be anything. I could call it my gallery, if I could spell gallery. So the node value could be anything, but the value of the HTTP variable page must correspond to an existing file that must be saved inside the views folder. So in this case, page equals photos correspond to views photos.php. Notice that I created one new file and I added a single anchor to my navigation. And with that in place, my navigation will change. The new anchor is added, and if I click it, here is my page. Just to round things up, I'd like to show you how you can connect your brand new website here with a style sheet, so you can start to design it a bit. First of all, I'm going to create a new folder. Let's call it styles. Inside styles, I'll create a cascading style sheet. Design.css, for example. And I'm just going to write a really hideous rule here. Body could have a background of red. Not that I think a background of red is a pretty cool design, but it'll be really obvious that index is connected to the style sheet. It'll be very obvious if I'm successful in connecting the style sheet with my site. So what I do is I grab the page variable and use the method CSS, and I pass a string, and the string I pass is the relative path of my style sheet. So look inside the styles folder, look for design.css. Save, take a look in the browser, and I hope when I refresh I should get a red background. Excellent. There you have it. A really simple skeleton for a dynamic website. It's very, very little PHP and it saves you a lot of time. And I know this is not extremely advanced or really smart in many ways, but it's a very, very good starting point for getting in touch with PHP and using it for something useful. Once you get to really understand what's going on here with the request, you are set up to fairly easily pick up the mechanisms of building much more advanced PHP sites. So this is a very, very good place to start, in my opinion. Thanks for watching.